All right. Would everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. I have a roll call, please.
Asner.
Present.
Director Byers. Here. Director Faulkner. Director Hudson. Director Mueller.
Here.
Vice President Petroff. Here. President Cuneo.
Here. Recognition proclamation.
Good evening, Board. President Cuneo, Board of Directors, and Dr. Keenan. I'm Jennifer Henry, the Executive Director of Communications, and tonight I'm here to share a proclamation for Family Engagement and Education Month for the Board's approval and signatures. November is designated as Family Engagement and Education Month, which provides an opportunity to promote awareness of the vital roles that families have as partners in education of children of all ages. In SSD, we recognize that partnerships between families, schools, and communities working collaboratively throughout a child's educational journey results in students of all backgrounds and abilities achieving at higher levels, becoming productive citizens, and contributing to our communities and society as a whole. Thank you, Board, for your continual support of family engagement in SSD. Ms. Doyle will present the proclamation for your signatures at the conclusion of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no public comment. Would someone like to make an approval of the agenda, please?
Moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None. Would someone like to make a motion to excuse Mr. Faulkner today? My understanding is that he is up to his ears in contractors on his kitchen and is unable to make this meeting. Someone like to second that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, legislative update. Bill, it's all yours.
We have Mr. Campbell who's on Zoom right now, so he's going to give us an update.
All right.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity to continue to provide services and represent SSD before the Missouri General Assembly and its agencies. I thought we had a very successful freshman tour. We were able to get the special school district on the agenda. This freshman tour is unique to Missouri. It was postponed because of COVID. They instituted it back this summer, and it's where freshman members of the General Assembly tour state facilities across the state. And it's tough to get on their agenda, and we were able to get our SSD facility there. I thought it was a good tour, and I even had some positive comments from some of the most conservative members of the General Assembly about what you did and what you're doing and the services you provide for St. Louis County. I thought it was very impressive and very well received. Election year. And as we have seen just recently in Virginia, education is going to be the number one topic. It's polls is the number one issue, the number one concern by people, the number one point of interest. This will probably be, and we say this every year, but this will probably be the most challenging year for elementary and secondary education that we have seen. Let me go through some of the issues that I think we will be facing this year. There will certainly be legislation introduced this year, both in the House and the Senate, probably several pieces, dealing with the banning of critical race theory instruction. We know that what we've seen is we haven't seen any of that in the state of Missouri, but that's still going to be a legislative proposal. See that will be front and center. As we saw last year and again this year, legislation prohibiting masks and vaccines in both public and private, public institutions and private businesses. We saw that all encompassing. I don't know if you remember last year, but the bill that passed the House even went as far as to say that anybody can refuse any vaccine. Most of the discussion has been revolving around COVID vaccines, but the bill last year went a lot further than that. We'll see, although that this is going to play out in the courts, and I don't think that the state of Missouri has any. You can't supersede the supremacy clause of the United States Constitution, but there will be legislation that overrides the Biden vaccine mandates. Of course, we've seen a decision out of the federal court in New Orleans that has stayed that, but everything that I've seen from clients and recommendations have been that you should go ahead and proceed as though it's going to be the law of the land. The governor issued an executive order dealing with the executive branch, which prohibits them from abiding by the Biden executive order. But then again, we're a long ways to go before it comes into effect on January the 8th. But legislation will be introduced this year. State legislation that would override the federal executive order. That'll be there. Other issues that I think that you should be aware that are going to be back with us. Legislation that allow for the recall of school board members. We haven't seen anything filed yet. Filing will be December the 1st. We'll have to see the details, but we're pretty sure in discussions with my other educational lobbying colleagues, this should be back before us. The bill, again, that changes the election date for school board members and also other bond issues from April to November. That will be back again this next session. There's also some serious discussion from some of the members about changing the nonpartisan nature of school boards elections to partisan elections. We have not seen that before. Strong discussions about that. I wouldn't be surprised if we wouldn't see that again this next session. Well, again, we will see this introduced for the first time this session. So we need to be on the lookout on that. We saw last year, we saw transfer bills. We saw open enrollment bills. Of course, those are very concerning because it affects our capacity issues. SSD does wonderful work, and a lot of people want to be able to access the services of SSD. And so we've got to be careful about that and watch for those, because that could affect the capacity and increase the enrollment and student population at a special school district. We believe, again, as was last year, that attempts to repeal the personal property tax of the state of Missouri will be back. The House bill didn't make it out of committee. The Senate, on the Senate floor, lots of debate, lots of time spent on this. In the end, the sponsor was from St. Charles County. They limited it to St. Charles County only. It still failed and it didn't pass. But I think a statewide prohibition of personal property tax will be before us again this next year. Other issues that I think we need to watch but are going to affect the time spent and will be controversial. Even though the Supreme Court ruled and upheld the vote of the people on the Medicaid expansion, it still has to be funded. We know that there are individuals that have signed up, not the total amount, the 260,000 that are able to. I think there are about 70,000, but funding for Medicaid expansion has to be budgeted, part of the appropriations process, and I think that's going to be a controversial issue. We have not funded the last allotment of the American Rescue Plan funding, the last COVID federal funds. That will have to be done this session. That'll probably be done by a separate appropriations bill, and that will be a controversial issue also. The congressional redistricting is going to be probably one of the first issues that the General Assembly deals with, drawing the lines for the congressional districts. The controversy, I think, will lie in how whether Jefferson County is all in one district and what they do with St. Charles County. I think that those are probably the two hot points in crafting these congressional districts. It's got to be done by the General Assembly. And of course, we have filing open in February. So I think this will be the first issue that they tackle. And there will be a lot of time spent on this, especially over on the Senate side. That's, gosh, and hold on, there could be more. But those are the major topics that I see facing us for this next session. And it's going to be a challenging one. And especially when, as I mentioned before, when you throw in the fact that this is an election year and will be a contentious off-year election year. I also want to mention that as far as congressional redistricting, there has been talk about, we got 6-2 right now, 6 Republicans in 2 Democratic districts. I think that'll stay. There's been some discussion about trying to cut out one of the Democratic congressional districts. I just don't think the numbers are there that they want to really tackle that. They've got 6 safe districts now, and that's where they want to be. We mentioned, I think the last time at the end of session, Senator Blunt's not running again has, gosh, what a domino effect. So it's going to affect not only congressional races, the senatorial race, but it also affects Missouri State Senate races, Missouri House races. There is a statutorily, constitutionally, we're required to have 10 members of each party to meet and try to draft our state House and Senate districts. They won't come to an agreement. This will be done by the courts. We should have something by January. I would assume the courts will have something in place. But right now, we really don't know what those districts look like either. And a lot of people are jockeying to run for those Senate seats in state Senate seats and state House seats. So we've got quite a it's quite a jumble here of things that are before us, and what the playing field is going to look like a year from now. That's high points. I know I have only have about 15 minutes, and I've tried to hit that mark or a little less. So certainly open to any questions.
Questions, anyone? I have a question for you, please. I was at MSBA
Yeah.
last week, and they have a position that they're pushing, that not to subdivide school districts in school board elections. I know there's legislation for special school districts.
Yes.
Two sub-districts. Can somebody make sure that the legislature knows that we have a set procedure that's already passed into law, and that if we do that, that we're not going to be affected?
Right. You know, that's the uniqueness about us on so many levels in the statute. We're different. And whether it's the foundation formula or like you're talking about the school board members. So yes, aware of that. And, you know, on issues of transfer and issues of open enrollment, those issues affect us so much differently than any other district in the state. So yes, it's one of those things we read every bill, we monitor every bill, we monitor every hearing, and then we forward that to SSD staff for their expertise and our evaluation of those pieces of legislation. So yes, very aware of that.
Okay, the problem that I had with MSBA, I was at the delegates meeting and they were not aware of it.
Well, you know, and it's interesting because so many people aren't, and that's why we've got to be so vigilant. And, you know, they're so focused on the regular K through 12 districts, and they don't understand the uniqueness of our statute and the uniqueness of our educational model. So it's something we got to stay on our toes and constantly monitor.
Thank you. You are monitoring that, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We follow every piece of legislation. We follow every hearing. We're always in attendance. We try to, if something comes up, give real-time contact with your staff. Staff is excellent. I mean, the response. So if we're sitting in a committee hearing, something comes up, their question comes up, we'll send a text or we'll send an email. So,
thank you.
Yeah, we tend to be pretty paranoid when it comes to legislation and how it affects us because we're so different.
Another question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, next we have the audit report, please.
Good evening, Dr. Cuneo, Vice President Petra, Board of Education, and Dr. Keenan. My name is Jeff Hogg. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Special School District. We'll give the audit presentation this evening. It's my honor to introduce Janice Smith from Showalter and Jabouri, and she will walk you through that presentation now.
Good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you this evening. As Dr. Hogg mentioned, my name is Janice Smith. I'm a director with Showalter and Jabouri, the auditors for the district. First, I wanted to mention that Showalter and Jabouri did meet with the audit committee last week to go over the audit results in detail, so I have prepared a high-level summary to share with you this evening. The current year audit resulted in the issuance of our report related to your financial statements that were prepared by management. On page 1 of those financial statements, you will find a report in which we have issued an unmodified opinion. This means that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles. Similar to last year, the opinion has an emphasis of a matter paragraph related to the ongoing pandemic, but this does not impact the fact that it is an unmodified opinion. With regards to federal and state reporting, we noted no instances of noncompliance that we are required to report and no matters involving internal controls that we consider to be material weaknesses. While the report itself is lengthy, given all the required statements, notes, and other information it includes, I encourage you to carefully read management's discussion and analysis, which begins on page 4. This is where management provides an overview and analysis of the district's financial activity for the year. In addition to the audit report, we have also issued a report to the Audit Committee and the Board of Education, which includes communication of certain information related to our audit, which is required by professional standards. Finally, the last report we issued is a report on internal controls. We did not identify any items we classified as material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, but we did include a few observations noted as other matters with related recommendations and best practice considerations. I would like to extend our thanks to Dr. Keenan, Dr. Hogg, and Ms. Jenkins and their staff for their assistance during our audit, and at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Schools update. The COVID update.
We're back.
Is there anything changed?
Yeah.
All right.
Good evening, President Cuneo, Board of Directors, Dr. Keenan, Kevin Anders, Executive Director of Career and Technical Education and College and Career Readiness, and with me is Dr. Grigsby, Executive Director of Schools and Programs. We're giving you the schools update once again. So, the purpose of this update, again, is to provide the board and the community with the status of our plan, remaining state and federal requirements of at least every 30 days, providing the board with an update of our plan. Next slide. So we're moving into the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan. So next slide. So again, all those key provisions are still there. Masking, social distancing, health screening. One thing we did clarify a little bit over the last month is clarifying how we teach respiratory etiquette, so that's the covering sneezes and coughs and those things, and especially recognizing based off student disability status that might impact their ability to do some of those respiratory etiquette pieces, and so how do we accommodate for that? But other than that, the full plan is still available for view on the SSD website. When we move into the month of December, we're going to begin a broader review process. And we'll share that with you when we meet in December of how we're going to get that feedback from all the different stakeholder groups as we update it for the second semester. Next slide. Any questions?
What's happening with our 5 to 11-year-olds? They have opportunities to get vaccinated.
We are communicating with families about the vaccination changes and that is available. We are going to be encouraging them. We wanted to wait until St. Louis County got their vaccines because I know there was a little bit of a delay. But we have been working with communications to send notification out to families letting them know that is approved, and we would encourage them to get vaccinated because it can limit the amount of time that they would have to quarantine if exposed.
I think we'll host an event like we did last spring for the adults at one of the tech schools on a Saturday,
We don't have anything planned at this time.
Okay.
There are events throughout our community, so what I think that we would plan on doing is most likely trying to coordinate with events in the community and making sure our families have that information.
Yeah, it's just difficult when so many people are vying for the COVID vaccines and to be able to encourage our families. So we're advertising it, letting them know where they're offering it. It's very accessible a lot of places. The other thing too is we're recommending, because of the nature of our students, a lot of our students are medically fragile, working with the families and working with the pediatricians.
Anything else? Thank you.
We'll see you next month.
I'll give you my version, it's shorter.
All righty. Next, we have the instructional audit process. Dr. Vogel.
Yes, Dr. Bolton, we didn't do an update on this last year because of COVID, so this year we are reinstating our instructional audit, so it's just going to update any of our new board members and our existing board members from last year. Good evening, Dr. President Patra, Board of Education, Dr. Keenan. My name is Molly Bolton. I'm the Executive Director of Teaching, Learning, and Accountability. And tonight I'm going to talk to you about the instructional audit process. So the purpose of this presentation is just to update you on the instructional audit process that we've used in the past and how that will look this year. So basically, an instructional audit is where we do a random sampling of classrooms across the SSD schools and tech schools and partner districts. And we do a random sample that is proportionate to the number of teachers that we have in those districts. Matt Trevor has an algorithm that he uses, and those teachers are randomly selected. So we also have established a key attribute list of those best practices, universal support, high leverage practices, and instructional practices that we know are effective for our students. And so using that list as an observation tool, we are doing walkthroughs as well as interviews. So the reason why we're doing this is really to look at those best practices and how they're embedded across the county, and actually hear from our teachers about how they're using assessment data and interventions in their classrooms to support student learning. Also, we want to know how our teachers are feeling about the support they're receiving and the materials that they have to make sure that they're adequate for the students that they are serving. And then lastly, we really want to see those visible implementations of those best practices for this to really kind of evaluate where we are utilizing those best practices in our schools. And those best practices are the things that we know lead to positive student outcomes. So the how we're doing it is we are using our instructional coaches and our curriculum facilitators, and they are visiting that random sample of classrooms across the county. And it is K through 12. And like I said before, it is our SSD schools, partner districts, and tech schools. We do a quick walkthrough that gives us a snapshot of what's going on in the classroom and those visible things that would be in the classroom that show high impact, and looking at those universals. Then we conduct about a 5 to 8 minute interview with the staff member that we have just observed. And that can be done at the time of the walkthrough, or we can schedule that interview at another time that's convenient for the teacher so that we're not taking away from instructional time. With that interview, we're asking them about the types of data they collect and then how they use that data to drive their instruction, as well as any other formative assessments that they might be using, and the materials, making sure they're appropriate for our students. So we'll be doing this the month of November and probably a little bit into December. With Thanksgiving break, a lot of folks are gone, part of those days, and so we will have them completed before winter break. Next slide. And then what we'll do next is really kind of think about those things that we learned in 2019. As Dr. Keenan said, we didn't get to do this last year because at this time, schools were just coming back for some, and then some still weren't in session. So we paused it last time. But really thinking about those next steps from last time where we had conversations with our partner district directors and our principals, and really talking about the quality of those instructional practices. And each director and principal did an action plan to improve those practices. We also created those numeracy and literacy plans, those integrated tiered models that are now posted on our website for each of our partner districts. And then just really thinking about how can we increase those high leverage practices to have better student outcomes. Slide, please. So after the audit, we will be compiling that data from those walkthroughs, and we'll be comparing that data from the 2019 data and share at that high level with all of our stakeholders, and then to be developing action plans to kind of address next steps and how to improve our practices. Questions do you have?
Anyone? I just have comments. Go on.
Sure. Dr. Bolton, thank you. Would you be okay in the near future with sharing with us or the consolidated list of best practices?
Absolutely. I can share the interview form as well as the observation form. I can put it in your Friday packet.
Excellent. I'm also curious about what kind of access our instructors or teachers have to that. Have they seen that in advance, and how long have they been aware of those?
So those practices, some of the practices are universal checklists that are a part of their evaluation system that administrators complete every year, and that is something that our teachers are well aware of. It's also a part of our induction program, as well as those high leverage practices that we're looking for. That's a part of our induction program as well. And remember that induction program, it doesn't matter if you're a brand new teacher or an experienced teacher. If you're new to us, you're going through that onboarding process that would expose you to those.
Yeah, I have a, question or comment. I know one of the sort of areas of discussion that we've had, our board meeting with Dr. Keenan was about the amount of paperwork that teachers are filling out and completing all the time, the assessments that they're doing. So I was hoping if we could just hear more at some point as an update about which assessments teachers are hoping we're going to do, what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, and so we will be able to collect a list of those assessments that teachers are using And then the other piece with that is we're also collecting that data point of how are you using the data. And so I think that's really important, because if we're doing assessments and we're not using the data, it's a waste of time. And so we really want to see how they're utilizing that data and what data makes the most sense to them to utilize to drive their instruction.
Ted, the comment right on that, thank you. I see no reason to collect data unless we're using it.
Right.
Sometimes all we do is collect.
Exactly.
My question was on, is there a way to factor out the COVID effect from 2019 to 2021? And I was just curious on that.
Well, when we're looking at those best practices being implemented, I don't feel like there should be that effect there, because those best practices should still be in place in our classrooms for our students to learn.
I was just wondering, will we have learned, I'm sure we have. I'm curious on what we have learned on Zoom meetings, and if in fact we'd ever have to return to this again, what were the best practices? And so that we could start right off with it.
Sure. And I think there's a lot of studies being done around the nation on those types of things with hybrid learning and blended learning like that. One thing that I've noticed just on the few observations that I've been in is our teachers are, it seems to be, the classrooms that I've been in, utilizing technology a lot more integrated than what I have seen in the past. And I do feel like that's probably an effect of our teachers having to do that during COVID. So that is something that I think could be a very positive impact.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go right ahead.
So I know you interviewed that 5 to 8 minutes with the teachers. Do you talk to the parents or even the students at all, just to kind of see, so how are you, it's weird to ask this, but how are you liking this instructional? You know, how do you like the effects of work? I know their opinions could be different things, but the ones they like, the ones they, you know, are gravitating to, do we ask them anything?
So our teachers do that through our classroom plan, do, study, act cycles, our PDSA cycles.
Okay.
You know, that is a part of the instructional cycle for us, for our students to say, hey, what in this lesson or in this unit works well for your learning?
Right.
And what did not? And what do you think we might need to do differently next time? And so that is a part of our training process, that our teachers are already embedding that into their instruction, because we know how powerful that can be. And it also causes kids to reflect on what did help me in the learning, which can be very powerful for them, so that they can advocate for that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Gold. Next, Justin McCarra, shortage, please.
We have 3 people presenting this, and a lot of people working on it. So we have Dan Kelly, we have Dr. Yates, and we also have Chantel Chandler. So they're going to update the board on all the information that we've been working on to increase our hires.
Good evening, Dr. Cuneo, Vice President Petroff, Board Director, Dr. Keenan. My name is Dan Kelly, Director of Human Resources.
I'm Tammy Yates, the Assistant Executive Director of Partner District. And I'm Chantal Chandler, I'm the Marketing Administrator with the SSD Communications Department. So to start off, we go to the next slide. We knew that we had an issue that had a lot of focus on it, but in order to be able to address it, we really needed to back up and take the broadest view of the recruitment to hire cycle that we could. And so that began with a SWOT analysis. We wanted to make sure that we were emphasizing our strengths in our messaging, that we were featuring the opportunities that we knew we could take advantage of, that we were aware of and mitigating whatever threats were currently making it difficult for us to recruit and hire new paras to the district. And we wanted to look at weaknesses so that we could address those as messaging as well. So the graphic on the screen just bullets some of the highlights of those strengths. We are Missouri's largest special education provider and the 10th largest employer in the region. These are huge positives that we can be highlighting. We have generous benefits that start your very first day that you're employed. We offer a lot of professional development, and specifically to paras, there have been some new developments there as far as opportunities for them to grow their skill set both as a para and then, of course, take advantage of tuition reimbursement opportunities that the district offers. So those growth opportunities, and that the work is extremely rewarding. Weaknesses, we have to recognize that the compensation is not particularly competitive in the current employment market, that the work expectations can be very broad and they're difficult to articulate in messaging, and the overall length of our hiring process can be a barrier as well. We have some great opportunities. Due to the pandemic, a lot of people have left particular career fields and are looking for new ways to start working again. So we have a large number of job seekers to take advantage of. We have a new paraprofessional support system built into the district. So we have specific folks that are taking excellent care of moving our paras through both onboarding and then supporting them as they begin these careers. DESE is fortunately providing a fast track to sub-certification, meaning that we can look at the opportunity of taking an aide and turning them into a para quickly. And then we have new digital recruitment assistance tools that we wanted to start to incorporate. The threat is that everyone is hiring. There are tons of people looking for employees right now. The market is therefore competitive. There is pandemic hesitancy about bringing people back into school buildings to work, and the background check delays are beyond our control, and they do lengthen our process.
So our starting point, and can you go back one slide, please? So our starting point in August, we had 224 teacher assistant vacancies. So through that SWOT analysis, we identified we needed comprehensive solutions, a broader outreach, we needed to increase our stakeholder input, and we needed a much more strategic analysis utilizing meaningful data to guide our decision making. Next slide, please.
So my job is to take that information and look at it specifically through a marketing lens, but we put that lens on the entire process. So one of the first things we did was look at the job description and made sure that it was accurately reflecting the actual work that teacher assistants were doing in our buildings. We also wanted to emphasize the salary information, the hourly rate, and we wanted to make sure that folks knew where they were applying to work. Previously, we just had a blanket, open paraprofessional application. So we instead broke that into regions and listed districts so that people could be applying, realizing they could work right in their neighborhood, realizing they could work in their child's school district, et cetera. We also changed some of the messaging. Paraprofessionals often have very close relationships with the students that they support. And so they are champions in our district, they are heroes, they are allies, and so we wanted to use that messaging in order to recruit new people. It's very special work that they do. They're very special to the students that they serve, and we wanted our messaging to reflect that. We also looked at new vehicles. So over the summer, billboards were used for some recruitment, and that helped up those numbers that you'll be looking at later as far as the first group of paras we were bringing in when school started. We started utilizing social media and social media advertising. I went and met with Kevin Haar, who is supporting paras in the district now. We did a web feature and included that on social, talking about how paras are welcomed into the district and the support that they get. We used our Chamber of Commerce relationships to start asking for support in recruiting new people to the district. And the biggest tool that we started using was Indeed, the online recruitment service. Additionally, through the marketing lens, we looked at how to ease the application process, how to up our internal communication flow, and we are also looking at a referral program for people working in the district to help us find new people to join us.
Slide, please. So, back. Thank you. Some of the strategies that we've identified, as Chantel mentioned, really specializing our posting based on regions and status. So when we say status, really looking at teacher assistants and teacher's aides. As Chantel said, really letting staff, potential staff know that they can work, if they so choose, in the area that they live. We know that that's a huge step in the retention component. We really looked at streamlining the application process, really identifying barriers or steps that we required that weren't necessarily providing us meaningful data that was viewed as a roadblock from starting to completing the application. So we looked at streamlining that and eliminating what wasn't very useful. We screen applicants every single day, and then we place them directly into the hiring pool. We increased our engagement between human resources and partner districts and our SSD program administrators, centered around current vacancies and enlisting their help when we're having a hard time tracking down an applicant, really engaging them in that process a little bit more than we have in the past. We adjusted roles and responsibilities within the HR department to really make sure that we're utilizing our human resources as best as we can to engage our applicants to get them through the point of applying to getting into the classroom. And then we really increased our engagement and inclusion of Kevin, as Chantel mentioned, Kevin Haar. He's our paraprofessional professional learning facilitator as part of the onboarding process. He really provides in-depth training to our staff prior to them entering the classroom and is really there to support them and mentor them throughout their journey. Next slide, please.
So one area we really wanted to look into and increase is our collaboration and communication between the separate departments and the stakeholder groups that are involved in that hiring and application process. So we really worked with our communications department and human resources and our partner district and SSD schools to make sure that our SSD administrators were very up to date on the processes that we were working with. We asked them for input in what were the barriers that they would experience when they would go to hire candidates, and we increased that monthly collaboration. So ways that we did that, Ms. McRiddle and I, we meet with our liaisons on a monthly basis as well as our directors and our coordinators. So we would keep them updated on the information of where we are in the process and make sure we were communicating with what their vacancies were, how many candidates they had in the pool that they were looking at, any recommendations that were made, and really just make sure that we were on the same page with that. A few barriers that were identified by SSD administrators in the hiring process, first being transcripts. What we were finding is that some candidates who did have those 60 credit hours were not able to get access to their transcript from the university. DESE does require an official transcript, and we are finding that if some of our candidates still had outstanding bills with those universities, they were not able to get those transcripts, so that was a barrier. We're also looking at credit hours. We had many applicants that were very interested in entering the field as a paraprofessional, but may not have had those 60 credit hours. And so we'll talk here in a second about the substitute certificate program that DESE rolled out. That was great timing that we can take advantage of. And then the other barrier we had was submission deadline. So I know as we prepare for our board meetings, there is a deadline in which we have to have that information to be prepared. So it was one of the things that we asked is if we could extend that a little bit. So instead of having to have those recommendations in a week before, we were allowed to make recommendations up to the Friday before the board meeting, which did help. So moving on to that DESE substitute certificate process and how it supports our needs. And if I'm taking over all the information, let me know.
You're doing good.
You're good. Okay. So DESE has implemented a program where through 20 hours of online modules and training, a paraprofessional candidate who may start as an aide, we can then complete that process and then they can get their sub-certification and become a teacher assistant. So what that allows us to do is accept those applicants that may not have that 60 credit hours. They come in, we hire them as an aide. Kevin Haar, our paraprofessional facilitator, assists them through those modules and we support them through that process, where then they take an exam at completion and then they can move from an aide up to a paraprofessional. So that really is motivating because not only are we helping them to get that training and we are providing the fee in order to do so, we're covering that for them. And then they do receive that increase in pay by becoming a paraprofessional, and then they also receive their sub-certificate and are able to be substitute teachers. It also, we're increasing our mentorship with those, and we're also providing that support and training.
So when we talked about needing updated and kind of different types of data or to look at data differently, next slide. Thank you. So really, just this provides an overview of the data that we kind of shifted from, if you see the difference between August 24th into the September 28th. So keep in mind, this does not correlate necessarily to board meetings. We submit and monitor data on a weekly basis, so this is kind of our tracking data. So really what we wanted to do is really look at our vacancies, new applications, and applications in the pool, or applicants in the pool, meaning applicants eligible to be hired. So we're on the right trend. So vacancies are trending downward, while at the same time we're maintaining a somewhat standard level of employees eligible to be hired in the applicant pool. So as we hire staff, we're also then replenishing the pools for administrators to interview at the site-based level and make recommendations to hire. And as Chantel alluded, that's really been helpful through the marketing and communications department on broadening our reach to applicants that we might have missed in the past. Next slide, please. So again, just a little bit of a different representation of the data, how we collect it, how we utilize it, what we're looking for. Again, the change for the latter part of August. So when we really look at our progress, we're really looking at recommendations for hire, awaiting background checks, and then approved by the board or going to the board for approval. So really what we want to see is receiving recommendations from hiring administrators, and then once that recommendation is accepted, and then they move into awaiting background checks. And as when we talked about earlier, really utilizing our current HR staff in a different role. That role was really designed to decrease the amount of time that we waited for the background checks to come in. So through constant engagement, because those are two barriers. The applicant has to go get their fingerprints, and then the applicant has to submit a form back to us. So what we wanted to do is engage a little bit more with them to kind of encourage them to submit that in a timely manner so that then we can process that and get them to the board for approval. So that's how we adjusted some staffing within our own department to kind of decrease that lag time. So that's kind of just a depiction of how our data looks. Again, not necessarily associated with board meetings, but by dates how we submit it. Next slide, please.
And so we had mentioned earlier that Indeed has become a really critical player in helping us recruit new people that did not know about the opportunities necessarily at SSD. We had our first posting that we ran back in September. From that posting to date last week, 25 of the people who had clicked on the Indeed ad were hired, 18 were in the pool, and 4 had been recommended for hire. We put a second posting out last week on October 27th, and as of this afternoon, we've had 166 applicants through that Indeed ad so far. So that's been a really successful recruitment tool for us. Additionally, the messaging that we have there is slightly different than what we use on Frontline. So we're trying to speak very directly to that broad group of folks who are looking for something different, who perhaps left the service industry or another industry where they have a skill set for caring for others, but they don't necessarily want to go back into the kinds of professions they were in, and to try to take advantage of that. And we're also letting them know in that advertisement about the Grow Your Own program that we can now establish of that aid to para, so they can apply to either position through that single advertisement.
Well, and then through Chantel's, back. Sorry, Sean. Through Chantel's support, we've been able to unify that message so that when we engage the applicants on Indeed, we're kind of having a consistent message, a timely message, so that we can then make sure that when they click that they're interested in working for us, that we're then responding to them in a timely manner to see if we can catch them, so to speak, while they're kind of in the spirit of engaging with SSD. So again, a data source. So this was October 29th. A little bit of updates from there on the November 4th. So vacancies are down to 171. We've had 41 new applications received if we're looking at data through the week of November 4th. 81 applicants are still in the pool. We received 10 recommendations. 3 recommendations are pending. 11 are ready for approval, and 23 applicants are waiting for background checks. So we constantly take that data, we constantly engage those applicants, again, moving them from recommendation to sending to the board for approval. Next slide, please. Any questions that you guys?
I have a question. How long, I know we have no control over it, but how long is from the day they go get their fingerprints to getting the back? How long are they waiting?
It can vary. The fingerprints through not the FBI, Missouri Highway Patrol, is pretty quick. It's pretty timely, so usually a day or two. What we experienced early on through the Family Care Safety Registry Act, the state kind of tweaked their or changed their background check process in that department. So early on, that was a massive delay, weeks. They were losing people. Applicants were saying, I was cleared. We didn't have record of that. So, you know, that's another tweak that we made in our hiring process, is getting a little bit more engagement with that. So that's increased. That's gotten better with the FCSR, but it's still the longest one that's a delay. We've seen it up to probably a week. And then what the state did is that when they shifted it to a new platform, they've also increased the cost. So the previous one was free, so now there's a processing fee that we pay, so that there's no barrier for that as well. So, I mean, all in all, you're probably, on a great day, you're probably looking at a day or so for the fingerprints, and anywhere from 4 to 7 days for the FCSR. And both have to be cleared before we move the applicant on.
A question for you, second page. Non-competitive compensation. What are competitive compensations? Member of
I don't know if I could answer that. I can say there are a massive amount of jobs to choose from that start at the same rate that a paraprofessional would start with here.
I would say some of the barriers that I've, in talking to potential candidates, our job requires somebody with a very caring, nurturing personality, but can also be very challenging. And so we've had people say, sometimes it's the emotional toll, and sometimes the physical nature of our students when they can go to a restaurant or someplace else making $15 an hour versus what they, in our field, is kind of what we're getting at just right now with people raising what their pay is.
And I do think it's important to note that, sorry, Chantel, that,
That's okay.
that we have entered into a 2-year agreement with the SCEA, so we have taken steps to continue to drive that salary, especially on the starting wage. It will be $16 an hour at the start of the 22-23 school year. Sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to say nationally, we've never put an appropriate price tag on a care economy, right? So I understand why we are where we are, but it's something we have to be aware of. In addition, though, we have benefits that start on your first day. We do offer lots of other supportive programs. And for someone who finds the work meaningful, it's incredibly meaningful. So there are some differences than taking a restaurant job at minimum wage. So we're trying to highlight and honor those for the paras that are currently employed and also as a messaging tool for people who want to join the team.
Just one last question and comment. First off, thank you for all you're doing. We as a board recognize that the para shortage is of most importance to us. Looking at where we've come from August until now, we've filled roughly 7,500 positions, sitting at 170 right now. Just doing the math, it would take us 7 months just to fill the shortages. It seems unacceptable. So I think my first question to you is, what would you say to us as a board? How do you see this progressing over the rest of the school year?
I don't know if you want to, I mean, I think one of the challenges too that we struggle with is we are hiring, but we are losing some staff too. And so we are making progress, but it may not look like as much because for every number of positions we fill, we have half of those who resign. So I think it's a combination of working on increasing our recruiting efforts and trying to bring those candidates in and really outlining for them what the job offers, how we can support them, but then also continuing and increasing our support for our current staff. And so we're that's one factor.
Right.
Now, if there's another one.
I'm just gonna completely support that. No recruitment plan works without an equally robust retention plan. So taking care of the folks that we currently have means that we have more people coming into the pipeline because more people are there recommending that they come join SSD.
And I think it's important to recognize the work that you guys have done through Dr. Keenan. I mean, we have added a position to support our paraprofessionals through Kevin Hart. That's a unique position that has started this year to really solidify the training and the mentoring so that we can then transition the employee into the classroom so that they know what's expected, so that they feel comfortable, supported, so that they, with the goal of retaining them for longer times. We've asked for, picking up fees for pairs so that they don't have to pay for that. That's significant. Those are barriers that we just do, right, as a large district. So I think what we need to continue to do is through collaborative efforts, continue to reach applicants that we historically haven't, continue to process them in a timely manner, and get them to you guys for approval as quickly and as appropriately as possible. I do think what we're doing is laying foundation so that we can then come out of this in a better spot. I think we lost momentum when the pandemic hit, and we really stopped hiring. No one was working at the time, no one was in schools, so we stopped that momentum, and now I think we're playing catch up to that. So our hope is that as we kind of ease through this pandemic, that we come out of the better on the front, on the back end, a little bit more prepared, a little bit more organized in terms of marketing, our reach, and then our hiring practices as well. That is our goal, but I'm not naive to think any vacancy that supports our students, it's not acceptable. You're right, absolutely right.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would someone like to make a motion for the approval of the consensual items, please?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. There will be a closed meeting of the Board of Education on November 9th at 7 p.m. and November 19th at 1:20 p.m. That's for the
Policy committee.
someone like to make that motion.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Need a roll call on this one.
Director Asner?
Yes.
Director Byers?
Yes.
Director Hudson? Director Mueller?
Yes.
Vice President Petrov?
Yes.
And President Cuneo.
Yes. Would someone like to make an approval of our past minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carried. Following items were approved during the executive meeting on October 29th. Appointment, resignations, retirement, salary adjustments, and extra duty pay. October 26th, the following items were approved. Appointment, resignations, retirement, salary adjustments, extra duty pay, contract release request for the 2021-2022 school year. October 12th, the following items were approved. Appointments, resignations, retirements, salary adjustments, extra duty pay. On September 28th, the following items were approved. Appointments, resignations, retirements, salary adjustments, extra duty pay. On contract release request for the 2021-22 school year. So, next, word communication. Anyone? Meredith and I, Dr. Keenan, were at MSBA last weekend. The one thing that I would like to say on it, 3 days of meetings, we were there for 2 days. 3 days of meetings, there was not a single special education program. I find that, I know, ridiculous. I was, we have presented there in the past. I strongly urge that SSD have a presence there at the next MSBA. And I would think, after talking to some of the other people, different districts around the state, we could do tremendous. If we would just do how to do an IEP, people would be extremely happy. What happens is many of these districts, they only have, some of the smaller districts only have 500 kids. They might have 3 IEPs. And we just did a primer, much less other things that were involved. It just would seem to be a good thing. So I throw that out because I know we got a year to think about it, at least 6 months before presentations are asked. But I think we should get a better presence there. Same thing as what I brought up with Bill Gamble. I was at the delegate meeting, and they were completely approving the package in sub-district, that any district cannot be sub-district. Because they were talking about large districts having people then have certain areas, like let's say, certain people would be on this side. You'd elect this many people from this side and this many from another side. But the way it was written, it was the complete opposite of the way our schedule is. I mean, they're saying one district. So in other words, they said in that bill that they're pushing. We couldn't do that. That's why I clearly hope that Bill Gamble has a look at that, because nobody on MSBA delegates were aware of our structure. So I think we need to be aware of it. We make sure that somebody doesn't pass a law that is in conflict with another law. That's all I have to say. Next calendar events, everybody can look at that on their own. Would someone like to make a motion for adjournment?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. It is amazing how that is always unanimous. All right. How about 5 minutes, then we start our executive session?
Thank you.